Peace and blessings. This is Style Bay, aka Warlock Asylum, and coming at you once again with another um, episode of Raw Talk and a lesson from the text, the Ivory Tablets of the Crow. There's a different version with a different cover, so yours may be slightly different, but the information is the same. Basically, today we're going to talk about entering the dreams and some of the important features to remember. Let me see if I could do a screen share on this. Let me see if I can pull this up. Yes, I can. Okay, and this is the screen share right here. Let me just dot myself out the picture. Let me see. Okay. It talks about the Shamuzi, and in the beginning, it speaks about the call of the guardian Shamuzi, which is essential for the work. One of the things it mentions here on the opening of this text is in the second paragraph. It says, "And the Shamuzi will protect thee from harm and the annoying voices that would try to enter the mind. And do not be alarmed by her appearance when she comes to greet thee, and stand by the side. Now the lower part of the Shamuzi is like a horse. The upper part is like that of a beautiful woman with long golden hair. Its eyes are like those of a cat, and its teeth are the fangs of a bat. However, its spirit is pure as a child, for innocence is a valuable treasure that has long since been forgotten." Okay, I'm going to stop the share. Basically, the Shamuzi's appearance may not be in that manner. It's just the appearance that's given is just something to that the reader can connect with some of the qualities. Having fangs of a bat, it has a very protective nature. Eyes like a cat, it could pierce into the darkness, into the astral worlds. Its composition is somewhat like a centaur, which means that it delivers messages or gives you a vibe from those forces that you're going to be calling. One thing about the Shamuzi calling, as well as many of the dreams, is that they can be explored by just reading the text. But to really get a full experience, I would say that there are three things that must be remembered, which we'll talk about shortly. One of them is the solar fire that should be memorized. Its pronunciation and just how it's used. The next thing is the opening of the sea. That should also be memorized. And also the Shamuzi calling. And the reason being is that a person has to get to the level of understanding, and also in memorization is also a ritual. So that's one of the key things about the Shamuzi calling. It's not a long calling. It seems that way because when you're reading the text, the font, the Vasu font, the Vasu pronunciation, and the English translation is all concurrent in the same page. So it seems like it's a long thing to remember, but none of the exercises are long. Some people would try to avoid, that sort of thing, and they can do the work through memory, but it's just a different dynamic as far as devotion is concerned. And that should be kept in mind when you memorize the Shamuzi calling. And in a sense, just like martial arts, this is what separates people who are serious about the work than just the curious. Like in martial arts, I've heard a lot of different things why people can't do the katas or the practices, not only in the martial arts that Nzu employs, but also other martial arts and other martial arts schools I've been to. You would hear certain things, and then eventually a person would just wane themselves out. It's the same thing with memorization of three components of the text. There's even more that should be memorized, but those things are all tests for the reader. But a lot more should be understood. And so what happens is that people, they begin to wane themselves out if they can't, if they don't have that discipline or that seriousness. They'll just eventually, you know, make other excuses or try to drive their way through the system, and they're only wasting their own time, because, the formulas in these things, anyone can learn because the books are publicly available. But as far as like really opening up, um, and learning from the Nzu itself, it's not something that's an egregore. It can't be forced. It's only something that could be utilized or done if you are in connection with the system. So it's kind of like plant life. Like plants, they won't open up to everybody, and that's why sometimes the scientific world has problems studying plant life. If they feel that your vibe and energy is not in a certain direction, it's not going to open up to you. So it's the same thing with the Arvid and Zul. Another section that is important to memorize. Let me share my screen for a second. Is the opening of the sea. That's very important, which is calling on the spirits of fire and water. That's very important. And ladder work, a person will want to call, and the pronunciation of this opening of the sea is not it's not given. It's not given the English transliteration, because by this time the person should know how to pronunciate this, because they should have learned the soul of fire. Okay, and the other dreams, the vibration, what you find in the Nzus is the vibration of what you work with deals a lot with, it's going to reflect in your day-to-day life. So for example, if a person's having problems with lust or something like that, definitely memorizing the call of the Ayaquox is helpful, but other things should be memorized before that, like the call of the Nzu. If it can't be memorized, a person should be very familiar with it, but a person should strive, because if they're in the work for a lifetime, what are they doing that they can't, commit themselves to memorizing stuff that's not even long. I know people who, like, when we were young, we had to memorize, there's a lot of things that had to be memorized depending on what type of organization you was rolling with, you know what I'm saying? And so even some of the fierce dudes in the street element would have lessons memorized, things of that nature. So to memorize some calls and incantations, that's not asking much, and that should be done with anything. You know what I'm saying? You should try to get it to memory. It doesn't mean that you're less effective, but when you understand how rituals transcend themselves, because rituals in the beginning of any practice always begins on their physical understanding. How do I do this? When do I light this up? That sort of thing. Then later on, you begin to understand that it's a mental process. And so how you enact the ritual begins to change. And memorization has always been a part of that. So whatever, it's not only with Nzu, but whatever you're trying to do, you want to inculcate the memory. From Nzu's terms, unless a person has a real serious mental dysfunction, memorization is a sign of cleanliness. You know what I'm saying? So that's one of the things. It's the same thing with martial arts. I remember going to a acupuncturist, and it was my first visit to the acupuncturist. And as soon as I got on the board, and I was like, now I've been kind of on and off, slacking or whatever, just have a lot of stuff to do at the house, and domestic responsibilities. But at that time, I was seriously, training or whatever. And as soon as I got on, the doctor says, "Oh, you're a martial artist." He knew because my back muscles and everything like that was in line. Like, it's going to show in your physicality. Anyone who's a doctor, chiropractor, they can tell if someone's doing yoga or martial arts. It's very simple. And it's the same thing um, with with the art of Ninzuwu or if any of the esoteric arts. You can tell if a person, for you can tell if a person is practicing or cleansing their mind through memorization. You don't even have to be in that person's school of thought. You can tell. You know what I'm saying? What they're about. Um, Even if you're not in that school of thought, they could be a Muslim, a Christian, a Jew, a Hindu, and if you're in tune with what you're doing, which is one of the beautiful things about Ninzulu practice, you can see where other people are at in their practice. It's not for you to tell them that, but you kind of see the continuity and the backdrop behind all systems. That's one of the things that Ninzulu does provide, you know. And so they may think that they're getting into some sort of fiasco or getting over and that sort of thing, but you know, um, they're not. They're really just only fooling themselves. You know what I'm saying? Because they're playing with themselves, and that's how their lives will continue, and the level of success and what they've accomplished also has a lot to do with that. And it doesn't mean the person has to be super rich, or a person could be in poverty, for example. But even in those situations, um, the needs would be fulfilled. You see what I'm saying? So some people, they just live, as they live, and that's on them. You know what I'm saying? But if for people who are seriously in the work, you want to take whatever practices is that you're dealing with seriously, and it's the same thing with the art of Ninzulu. Um, there are many other dreams that definitely um, bring the scope of your exercise, to another level when dealing with self-cultivation. There's a lot of good that can be achieved from the Arb Zoo exercises like the Famu exercise, which I think I'll get on in another video. I was going to originally do this video about the totality of the dreams, but there are certain stops along the way when going through this path that are very important to consider. So I think, outside of the Shamuzi calling and the opening of the sea, the opening of the sea is also something that will keep a person pure, and if a person is doing the Vasu calling daily, then the memorization will be very easy. You see what I'm saying? Because the Vasu calling, the solar fire, is a form of purification. So you can tell what's going on based on what is not going on. You see what I'm saying? In the practice. So the practice, like I said, is path of warrior mysticism in the previous video. And from time to time, you may encounter people who are just jiving. You know what I'm saying? And one way you could test them out is by going through the soul of fire or seeing what they've memorized and different things of that nature. And that will tell you what level, not to say that they're suspect, but what level that you can communicate with them on. You know what I'm saying? And it's not about, someone justifying what they have and haven't done. That's just the level that they're on. You know what I mean? Like if you can't run down the block, then, if you a runner, you can only gauge certain things with the person. You may have to walk with them, or you may have to just sit and talk with them. It's not for you to judge their progress. But what I'm saying is that these are things that you learn along the way about, people in their own situation. You know what I'm saying? So, the thing is that you want to make sure that you're giving the best that you can, to the work for your own benefit. You know what I'm saying? And that's in anything, So Ninzulu, one thing about it, doesn't care about the progress of the individual in itself. Like, it's not like a system where that's trying to gather people up for salvation. That's not the essence of the Nzulu. So, um, as someone who's very familiar with Nzulu, people will come and go, and they would say all sorts of things. That's not for me to judge. You know what I'm saying? And they want to, they may want to gauge you, but you know where the person's at, so you can only meet them at their level. You know what I'm saying? That's what I mean to say. That's their level. If they're into foolery or trickery, that's their level. You know what I'm saying? It's only, I'm not even going to point that out. That's on them. You know what I'm saying? So, all you can do is just kind of keep doing what you're doing, and be the best person that you can be. And the philosophy behind Nzu is to share, because it makes the world a better place to share the knowledge that you have. Um, for those who appreciate and qualify, because knowledge has to come in increments, because if a person, if they can't digest the first facet of knowledge, how could they deal with the rest? You see what I'm saying? So you kind of learn these things, and you're able to put forth, things that's going to get you to be able to have a clean mind, a clean heart, and more fluency in daily living. There's a lot of progressive properties in the path of Nzulu that we'll talk about in our next video. But I just want to give a recap of the Shamuzi calling. Um, Another thing about it before I do close is that it mentions in the text that Shamuzi protects against the voices in the mind, because for those who don't know, that's how sometimes spirits come into a person, is through the mind and through desires. So even before we get to anything that's dealing with something of an otherworldly poltergeist phenomenon, let's just stop it short at the thoughts and the desires. And this is what Shamuzi protects against, and it also gives you insight into that. So it's not something that just blindly protects. It's a way of building up virtue through cleanliness, and that is a protection. And you get to see that, you get to feel that in itself. So we'll come back, we'll discuss more in our next video. This is Misael Bay, aka Warlock Asylum, coming at you once again, and want to say Wafube to everyone. Have a great day.